Welcome to Exploring Possibilities, a show about holistic spirituality. I'm your hostess, Cheryl Sitz, and if you're just finding our show, be sure to check out our website at journeyofpossibilities.com. You'll find a whole library of past guests, many interesting shows there. You can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher, and if you do listen there, do me a favor and rate us as well so that other people can find our show. And if you subscribe, then you'll never miss an episode. We'll be introducing today's guest right after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, this is Mario with Tech Life Balance, and I've been in the IT field for about 20 years. I have a big range of experience. I've worked with PCs, I've worked with servers, I've done online marketing strategies, I do websites, I even build online communities and help produce the podcast that you're listening to right now. I've actually been involved in IT so much that I got lost in all the technology, and technology was taking over me. And I'm not saying to unplug or anything like that. What I'm saying is find a balance. I know I did. It took a traumatic event for me to learn that capability, and it was a challenge. And there are obstacles and there's things you run into that sometimes you don't realize you're even doing. So I designed a program to help you do that by looking at all your technologies and just helping you embrace it in a way that it's smoothed into your life. And I like to say that we log in, log out, and break free so we can have life. Contact us at techlifebalance.net and let us know what we can help you with. Enjoy the podcast.
So today's guest on Exploring Possibilities, I'm very excited to have with us someone that I have met and experienced personally. Those are the best guests, and we have not had a sound healer before. So David Jesse Kennet is a registered holistic nutritionist, holistic allergist, and a vocal sound healer and coach. He's also a certified massage therapist, and he has been performing since the age of 21 when he debuted in New York City at the Lincoln Center with the internationally acclaimed a cappella group, the Starscape Singers. So he performed around the world and has gone on to study with some pretty amazing people. He's a protege of the late Canadian metaphysician Kenneth Mills, and he has also studied with sound healers Tom Kenyon, who I'm a huge fan of, and Jonathan Goldman, and he's a member of the Sound Healers Association. David practices something he calls soul sounding, and I'd like to have him explain what that is. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm really grateful to be here.
We are so glad to have you, and you do some amazing things with your voice and with instruments, which we will get into in a little bit. But what do you define as soul sounding?
Well, soul sounding to me is when we connect with a sound that comes from our heart, comes from our soul. And when we make this sound, it recalibrates us to the core of who we are. Really, in essence, I really believe that we are vibration. We are sound, and my life has unfolded in such a way that has really kind of corroborated this feeling very strongly. And through ancient times, they have said that the Creator is sound, that the world is sound, and the ancients have talked about sound as a very sacred part of our lives. And so soul sounding is when we come from our heart, from that authentic place that all of us have. And many of us speak from there all the time. Some of us that's part of our journey, is to find that core, that center within. And when we get there, when we make a sound from the soul, it's like all of our cells, the trillions and trillions of cells of our body are recalibrated to a high frequency.
Well, I know. So Mario and I had the privilege of being able to come out to Santa Barbara. I saw you post something about, actually a friend of mine posted that she wanted to come to an event you have in a salt cave. And so it was sound healing in a salt cave, and I could hardly resist that. So we flew out there, and we're in this Himalayan salt cave, and you began what you do with your voice and instruments. And literally every cell in my body was vibrating. I could feel the vibration, and it was profound experience for anyone that hasn't had that. I didn't know that healing could be so fun.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Well, it was really so wonderful meeting you at that time, and I'm great to be on your show. Yes, I mean, it's largely not talked about on the more kind of mainstream level of our communication in today's world, but sound is also has a lot of science behind it. Sound healing. We're often looking at the spiritual end of it and the energetics of it. But there have been a lot of studies, and this is what I like to bring in as an educator in sound therapy and sound healing, is that really there is science. And McGill University in Canada just came out with a study a couple of years ago where they gathered 200 separate studies that basically came to the same conclusion about how the voice affects the biochemistry of our body. And when we sing, we are actually boosting neurochemicals on our blood. For instance, dopamine and oxytocin are elevated, and also a really exciting little factoid is it boosts our immune system. And so immunoglobulin A, which is part of our white blood cells, is boosted when we sing, when we tone. So there's very much of a scientific reality to sound therapy, and even though it can be something that's very mystical and transporting and take you to other places in your reality, it's also a very physical experience as well.
And I love to sing. I've always loved to sing. And I think for a while I forgot about that. But even in the shower, you're right. You feel better when you sing. And so you're telling me there's science behind why I feel better, not just letting that sound flow through me, but the vibration of it.
Absolutely. And this kind of brings us to why I got into, the basis of where all this for me comes from, and why this means so much to me is as a child, I had severe asthma, life-threatening asthma. And my mom used to rush me to hospital in the middle of the night. And thank goodness I got to the emergency room in time to get an adrenaline shot. And that would open up my bronchial tube so I could breathe. So I came very close to dying a few times. And thanks to Western medicine, in this instance, it saved my life. And so as my journey as a child and going through this traumatic experience of asthma, I was grateful to eventually meet, and you mentioned in the introduction, Kenneth Mills, who was a metaphysician. He's transitioned he's passed away, but at that time he was opening people's voices. And so I had a voice lesson with him, and he was also a musician, should mention, a very accomplished musician, concert pianist. And so I got a voice lesson with Mr. Mills, and my voice just began to expand. It's hard to explain exactly how it happened, but it happened through imitation. And he would sing, and then I would imitate. And as I imitated, I began to find my own voice. And the more and more I sang, the more and more it was easier for me to breathe. And I found as I took deeper breaths from my diaphragm, which singing really demands you to do. When you sing, you really need to take deep breaths. And that really requires the use of the diaphragm, which is just below our rib cage. Working that muscle and taking those deep breaths, I believe, was a big factor in really curing me of pretty much of my asthma. My asthma is pretty much gone. I would say 98, 99% completely gone as a result of singing.
That's incredible. And it's funny, I've studied speech, and it's the same with speech. We don't normally speak properly. When we speak properly, you take these big, deep, what they call Buddha belly breaths when you're meditating, but that really deep breath that expands you. How does your voice expand? Because you sang before. So when you say your voice expands, can you kind of tell me what that means in terms of opening your body and really allowing the healing?
Well, really, I did a little bit of singing before I met Dr. Mills, but really, it really began at around 19 years old, 20, and then I had my debut at Lincoln Center, which was a thrill to be a part of this incredible a cappella group and be performing live concerts with them. So when I say expand, I guess what I'm talking about is really the size, the hugeness of my voice. I didn't realize how big it was, and it can be very surprising, that how huge one's sound can be. It's just so much larger than us, seemingly. And the interesting thing is it really is. It's kind of beyond the body. I believe that when we sing, and this is what I've been shown is that we're kind of receiving the sound. You might think of it as it's almost like this if sound was to be liquid, we're like this container that is this opening to this liquid frequency, and it's just spilling forth and coming out of our mouth. It's really about getting out of the way. I think it's really any kind of too much thinking, too much worrying about, do I sound right? Is this the right way to do it? Is really can interfere with the openness to receiving incredible, rich sound. And this is part of what I do in my voice lessons is show people how to access their soul sound. And again, a lot of it has to do with getting out of the way. When I do my sound healing ceremonies, I'm very grateful because, anytime you perform or anytime you have to, even if you were to do a speech or a lecture somewhere, there's this burden of there's a lot of pressure when you know you're going to be in front of other people. And it's kind of relieving to know that really it's all about me just showing up and getting the heck out of the way. And so that it's just leaving it up to the source, to the divine, to God, whatever you want to call it, to the higher power that allows this sound to come forth. And so, getting out of the way and just being open to the infinite possibilities of being.
Oh, I love that. I know I've experienced this in speaking and in trying to do workshops and those kinds of things. And I think other people have shared with me in the ways that they channel their gifts. There is this perpetuating fear that it might not show up. Like if I don't have a script, if I don't have a whatever, if I just rely on my gifts and I'm going to walk up and I'm going to show up with my gifts, what if they don't show up? Do you ever feel that? How do you coach people through that?
I haven't, it's that you're the first one to actually ask me that. I don't usually get that into that with my voice lessons. It's more about it's more about the techniques of production when I do my voice coaching. So this is a question that I haven't answered before, and let me just see what happens here because I'm not really sure if I can communicate it. What I do is I know that my job is, as I said, is to first of all, get out of the way. And when that sound comes forth, when you feel like you're connecting to something that beyond you, the biggest key I feel is it's like a relationship. You're having a relationship with God, with the divine at that moment. And really, that energy really doesn't open up to me, I don't believe, unless I commit. I have to commit to that. As soon as I commit, more comes. I want this. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to completely jump off a cliff at this point without knowing what the heck I'm going to do. But I commit to this frequency, this energy. And really, it's, I don't know. I feel very blessed in some ways because I was in the presence of my teacher so many years, the metaphysician Kenneth Mills, that I do feel like it's like a bandwidth I connect to. It's like a radio station, and that radio station is love. And it's a certain bandwidth. And I believe we all have access to that. I'm not special in that way, but how I get there, I don't know if I can express that. But what I can express is that I just commit. I commit to what begins to come out. And sometimes I feel, the instruments that I use. I mean, the drum is such a primal. It's been used since ancient times, right?
Yes.
So maybe if I just play a little bit for you, you can get a sense of what I'm talking about. Because it's all about feeling, really. I mean, even though here we are talking about this as if it's some kind of intellectual process, but it really is about feeling. Sound is all about feeling. And so when I play a drum, I have one right here. Let's play it. I just allow myself to feel what that's doing to my body. And again, this gets very primal for me. It feels like it's almost going into my bones. So in some ways it just allow the sound to come from the marrow of my bones. So at first, that kind of sound, if your listeners attempt this on their own, might seem disorientating. It's something new, but it's something that I feel is very healing. And when we can go to that very core primal sound. When I first started using the drum, which was fairly recent compared to everything else I've been doing, I would say the last 3 years. About 3 years ago, when I started using the drum and started getting into that more of that primal sound, I thought it would scare people. I thought it would be kind of creepy, right? But actually, and maybe it is for some people, I don't know. But,
not this one.
But it's afterwards, after my sound healing ceremonies, I would find that people would tell me their favorite thing of the whole evening was the drum and the singing,
yes,
with the chanting. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes, and I can't believe you've only been using it for 3 years, because it's as natural a part of you to me as your voice. It just flows. And I have to give away this part of the article that's going to be in our magazine, because I write about our experience in the salt cave. You come around to each person lying in this Himalayan salt floor, and you hold the drum horizontal parallel to the body. And when you hit the drum, everything vibrates. It feels like you release anything that you didn't even know you were carrying. There's just something very healing about the drum. Yes.
It really is. It's why the shamans in the past and present use it. And there's a very specific way of using it. And the intention is everything. Intention, as you said, you were releasing everything, and that really was the intention that was brought into the cave. And I had explained it that evening. That sound is an incredible tool for releasing. It can be, particularly the drum is really good. I mean, the drum does everything. You can use the drum for releasing. You can use the drum to amplify. I highly recommend it as a sound therapy tool. But it does cleanse. It purges. Sometimes it brings up a lot of emotions for people. If people are going to cry during my ceremonies, it's usually during the drumming. And that's a good cry. It's kind of a releasing cry. And then laughter can come later when I play the bowls. But the bowls tend to be a little more ethereal, angelic. That brings more of an angelic voice out of me. So we can use sound as an I don't know if this is too much information, but the sound can be a homeopathic remedy. So we can use sound as a sonic homeopathy, so to speak, where you can treat like with like. If you think about, you can think of it as purging, but we can also think of it as canceling out what doesn't serve you. In other words, if someone is feeling fear, for instance, they're feeling anxiety, they can have the intention of actually have a prayer and put that prayer on their body, and it could have the word anxiety on it. And as the drum is playing over the body, it's actually canceling out that reality for them. It's like two identical sound waves coming together. If you think of anxiety or fear as an algorithm, as a sound, as a waveform, maybe not a sound waveform, but as a waveform, as a frequency. When you send that information back into the body, two identical waves coming together actually scientifically will cancel each other out. And that's how we have these noise cancellation technologies like those Bose headphones that everybody's really into these days, and not just Bose. All those companies are creating these headphones that match the exterior frequency and actually cancel out external noise. It's the same thing you can do with emotions to a certain extent, energetically with the body. And I always am very clear to say that I'm not a psychotherapist by any means, but these are tools. These are adjuncts that people can use in their journey, on their own spiritual journey, and with their counselors that they're using professionally. But it is an incredible tool in that regard. So you can use it for helping the body release, cancel out what doesn't serve you, but you can also use it to amplify what you desire, bring in things into your life, and to even access your subconscious. just so many things. I mean, it would take a long time to talk about all this on your show, but it's sound penetrates. Basically, the big thing about sound is it goes deep, right?
Yes.
When we hear a drum, as you mentioned, when you felt that drum, goes right into your body, goes right into your bones, right? So sound we can actually go deep, and the significance of that is that sound is a carrier wave. So again, in science, we have fiber optics, which is a technology where you can carry digital information on a light wave. So we have ones and zeros, digital information being carried on a waveform. And it's very quick because it's light. And that's why we use fiber optics as to speed up our telecommunication systems, our internet. A lot of that technology is used to make things faster. With sound is not quite as fast as light, but a sound wave is a carrier wave. And just like you can carry ones and zeros on a light wave, you can carry information on that sound wave. And in this case, we can, you had mentioned in your introduction that I'm a holistic allergist. This is how I work with allergies, because we can introduce information with a sound wave and carry that information into the cytoplasm of the cells. So for instance, if someone's allergic to an apple or a peanut or wheat or gluten, you can actually introduce that information energetically on a sound wave by placing that substance on the body and then drumming the body. And this is partly what I do to help people get rid of their food allergies or the environmental allergies, as I use sound. Sound is a big component of how I do it. I also use acupressure and something called craneo-sacral therapy. And in 1 or 2 sessions, maximum, maximum 3 sessions, a food allergy goes away. And this is because the information has been reintroduced into the body energetically, and the body then gains clarity. When we have an allergy or intolerance, there's confusion. The body's confused. It thinks, for instance, an apple, as I mentioned, is a pathogen or a virus. So the body gets defensive and it thinks it's being attacked. Well, that's just confusion, right? So what we can do is reintroduce the idea of an apple by putting it on the body and playing the drum or on other instruments and doing the other modalities that I mentioned, the acupressure and the craneo-sacral therapy. And those 3 modalities basically reintroduce the information called apple into the cytoplasm of the body. And then once that information is inside the cells, then the body's clear. I hope this is not too confusing.
No, it's perfect. I was going to ask you about it anyway. It's very interesting. And to piggyback on what you're saying, so not only do you do this with food, but you mentioned to us when we were out there that anything that we reject or repel is, you can treat it as an allergy and work with it the same way. So money or
Right.
all kinds of other things, right?
Exactly. That's where it gets the allergy thing is exciting enough. I mean, I have offices in 2 offices in California, one in Santa Barbara in LA, and then in New York, because it's been so effective, this method of clearing allergies. But yes, there's also the emotional and behavioral component of this, which is really exciting as well. And so, I'm assuming that your audience is very open-minded, but yes, you can actually begin to bring in, for instance, let's say someone is not attracting their soulmate, right? They want to find their soulmate, and of course, verbally we'll say something like, "Oh, I want to meet the one. I want to meet my true love," and yet it's not happening. It's just not happening, and there's so much information now about the subconscious mind and the subconscious intelligence of our body is not always in agreement with our conscious mind, right?
Right.
So some are saying that 95% of our reality is being controlled by our subconscious, not our conscious mind. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge percentage. So it's very possible that someone is not be able to create the reality they want to create because their subconscious is actually in disharmony with their conscious mind, or it could be intolerant to the concept of soulmate, that like an allergy, almost like an allergy, but not quite the same, but that idea that where the body is rejecting a frequency, an idea, a concept, an emotion. So in the case of soulmate, I've had people put that intention down of manifesting their soulmate during my sound healing ceremonies, and they'll write that down, and they'll report back to me. I've had 2 or 3 people now tell me that after the ceremony that they were able to meet their soulmate in a short period span of having heard me and having experienced that.
Wow. So you could rebrand yourself as like the love doctor pretty soon, huh?
That's right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. That could be my new title.
If the other work dries up, I'm just saying.
Right. I could be a matchmaker with sound. So, and also addictions. It's been interesting experience with addictions where again, this would be more of a canceling out, but like where people are able to cancel out this addiction, this behavior of addiction to cigarettes. I've had 2 people now give up smoking after a sound healing session.
Wow.
And they had been smoking for many years. One was over 30 years. Also caffeine addictions and sugar addictions. I've seen great results with that too. And someone quitting caffeine completely after drinking 5 cups a day for decades. So it's very powerful. And what other examples can I give you? Also, people making more money and working with the word money. And as you mentioned, the word money. I mean, I've had businessmen, and one of the ways I test people for their subconscious, what's going on in their subconscious, is I use something called muscle testing. And that's also what I use for determining an imbalance or allergy. I don't diagnose, but I can see if there is confusion.
Right.
So it's all about whether the body's clear or confused about something. So somebody can say, oh, I want to be making a lot of money, but it's not happening. Their body can be confused by the concept of money. And so I just help that confusion by using sound. And there's different ways of doing that, but one of the ways is to put it on the body and to drum the body. So that's part of the magic of sound, that it can actually penetrate the cell walls of your body and go right into the cytoplasm. And in the cytoplasm is where a lot of magic can happen. So sound goes very deep.
Yes, it does. So tell me, if I wanted to work on an allergy to money or my soulmate or sugar or whatever, is this a real gradual process? How many sessions do you use, or is it different for everybody?
It's pretty much different for everyone. What happens is sometimes we can reboot the immune system. I call it immune system reboot, by the way, by this process of the craneo-sacral therapy, acupressure, and sound. It's basically like rebooting the immune system. And sometimes the body will forget what we did in a matter of like a few days. And everyone's different. There's no rhyme or reason for this. It's kind of a mystery. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason, but it's a mystery. Let's put it that way. Everyone's unique. And sometimes we need to do the same thing again in maybe a couple of weeks. But usually after 2, if not, like, I haven't really seen it go past 3 sessions for something. That tendency can be reversed. Again, with the emotions and the behavior, that's a little more complex because emotions it's not just, a matter of being intolerant to money. There could be
Right.
There could be other factors. There's a lot of different layers to emotions, and again, right, like I said, I'm not a psychotherapist, but there's a lot of layers to emotions and why people are creating the reality that they're creating. But definitely for allergies and for intolerances, and it's like 1, 2, 3 sessions. Sometimes just 1 session, people can see a difference.
That's pretty incredible. That's exciting stuff.
It's very exciting.
I had a question. Of course, Mario's over here and he doesn't have a microphone. So he held up a note and asked about the size of that drum that we heard reverb through a few minutes ago. Is that a big drum you're hitting on?
I'm trying to remember the exact size of this. It's it's what's called and I don't work for Remo, but I recommend, it's a good company. And so this is not an ad for them, but this is what I use. And I think it's about 20 inches, this one. I think it's close to 20 inches. I could be mistaken. And then they make smaller ones. And honestly, you don't really need the big one if you don't if you don't want it or can't afford it. They're all, I think they're under $100 each. And the smaller one is equally as resonant. This one is I like this one. It's good for placing over the body.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned, they're all very, very resonant, and the smaller ones will do the job for sure. And so you can drum yourself, you can drum other people, so yeah, that was a good question.
Cool. Well, I want to mention the name of your CD, your latest CD, Ancient Stories, Music for the Soul, and they can get that on cdbaby.com, right?
Correct, and they just type in my full name, which is David Jesse, Jesse, Kennet, and I use my middle name for my CDs, so that's the way to find it.
Okay, wonderful.
cdbaby.com.
And I love that CD, by the way. We play it a lot. So thank you for that.
Glad. My pleasure.
Okay, so you had all kinds of different treats for us in the cave. You had some really magical chimes, and you had bowls, and you had the drumming. And do those work with different chakras? Or, what is the high pitch versus the drumming? How does all that work with the body and with what was happening to us?
You can use bowls to balance different chakras. They make the white quartz ones for all the different chakras if you'd like. I'm of the school that really everything is what you want it to be. So if you don't have 7 bowls for your 7 chakras, don't panic. It's all about your intention and what you want to do. And it's not always just about the instrument. But yes, they make different bowls for different chakras. My setup, as you remember, was not 7 bowls. I actually I have 3 beautiful alchemy bowls, and they're infused with stones. One is called Indium, the Indium Bowl, and it basically is supposed to balance male-female energies. And I kind of joke about this, but I really, honestly, I got it because I just love the sound. And, again, it's like we can give a lot of purpose to these things, and that's wonderful. But sometimes it's just a matter of just listening for how a bowl resonates with you, and not getting too caught up on the chakras, and just see how things feel. Like I love this was my first alchemy bowl. The alchemy bowls are the bowls that they're crystal, but they've been infused with elements, semi-precious stones, sometimes precious stones and metals. You can even get a gold bowl if you have the money for it. They're not cheap. But this is called the Indium Bowl, and this is the sound. So that's a bit of a lower pitched bowl. That's what I feel is the lower pitched ones tend to be a little more soothing. The higher you get, I tend to I don't like personally. I'm not a huge fan of a very high pitched bowl. But I tend to think of the lower bowls, the lower tones, I should say, as the lower chakras of the body. And the higher pitch you go, the higher you go in terms of where it's affecting the body. That's my own feeling about it. So that was the Indium Bowl.
That was beautiful. And I'm so glad that we have such a crystal clear connection today. That's just fun.
Oh, good. I'm glad it came through clearly.
It did. So you do some very unique chanting, and I'd heard Tom Kenyon do some of this, and I have no idea where some of these sounds come from, how you make some of the sounds that you make, but it sounds like a lot of it is done through the throat. How do you develop your throat to do those things? Or is it, again, just getting out of the way?
It's a combination of getting out of the way and just imitation. I really, I feel like what I'm doing was kind of passed down to me as a legacy from Dr. Mills, from Kenneth Mills. And that's how I learned, was through imitation. So he would make a sound, and then, I would do it. The throat singing that, as you just heard me do a little bit of, is a little more challenging. That just seemed to just happen one day. It kind of just would happen. I can't really explain. It's really the throat singing. There's different ways of doing the throat singing. Some is a little more throaty than what I just did, and it's, but this approach I find is a little easier on the throat, because there's different things you can do that I think could actually hurt your vocal cords. But it happens, it happens in a very relaxed place. I can't do throat singing if I'm hyper caffeinated or stressed. I'm careful not to drink caffeine before I do my sound ceremonies, because that's not a good. It's kind of a paradox, right? Because you hope you have lots of energy to do a sound ceremony, but it's really, you want to actually be very relaxed. And for many of these sounds, they won't happen otherwise.
Right.
And there's also, of course, the harmonic singing, which is the overtones, and that can be taught. It requires a very tight, what they say, an embouchure. Your mouth, your lips should be they need to be actually quite tight and firm when you do harmonic singing. So harmonic singing, I'm sure many of your listeners are aware of it. If they're not, this is what it sounds like. So I'll play another bowl here to give us a tone. And here we go. A little lower.
Wow.
That's harmonic singing. And that one, I feel, when we do harmonics, I don't know what your experience was in listening to that. It tends to transport you.
Yeah. Not only was it transporting me, but it's almost a dual experience, because part of me was leaving and going somewhere else, and another part of me was so conscious of like my chest and my stomach, like I was feeling it also very strongly in my body. So it's an interesting experience.
Yes, it's something very otherworldly, isn't it? And
yeah. That
one is really good for actually getting out of your body. you can travel with that one. But I in my sound healing ceremonies, I do some of that. Not too much of it. It's useful to get out of our body sometimes. We can learn a lot when we travel like that. For me, so much of my life at this point is what's important for me. I think it's a balance, right? And that's what I try to bring in my ceremonies is balance. Balance is everything. Yes. But it's equally important to get into our bodies, and that's another thing that sound can do. And many people report that they feel more grounded after my ceremonies, which makes me happy because I feel really being in our bodies allows us to be more present, and it allows us to really feel all of our senses and feel and to be at peace with being human, even though we are at the same time divine, really coming to being at peace with being here now. And that's been where we can be more effective as human beings on our journey, is being fully present, feeling everything we need to feel. But the harmonics definitely take us out. That's for sure.
Oh, I love what you just said there. Mario and I were just talking about that earlier today, that we came here to have this experience, to be present in this body, in this moment, and all of the spiritual growth is great. But to me, the power is when we bring all of that into this body, into this moment, and what we're here for now. And your music does a fabulous job with that. You have other music besides the CD I mentioned, so I imagine all of that's available at cdbaby.com.
Yes, my first CD was called Soul Sounding, Music for Meditation and Transformation. And that's also, you can find that on the same website, cdbaby.com, David Jesse Kennet. And that one is, it sold out actually, and I reprinted them, repressed them. So that was very, very popular. And of course the new CD is selling well as well. But the first CD is more of the angelic energy that comes forth when I play the bowls. The first CD is just the bowls and my voice. I always sing on my CDs. Singing is part of what I'm about.
Yeah.
So I sing with the bowls on the first CD, and the second CD, the latest CD, brings in more of that primal energy with the drum and kind of a shamanic chant that happens. I don't even know what to call it. It's just a primal voice that comes. And I think, you know what, I think a lot of people have that voice and are just waiting to do it. I really want to begin to hold workshops where people feel safe in a safe setting, where people can allow that kind of primal energy to come forth, because it's really part of us. It's very healing and liberating to be okay making all sorts of wild and crazy sounds.
Well, we definitely want to have you down here to Texas to do one of those workshops too, at least one soon. And I know that you do events along the coast in California, and then you have a practice in New York, but you'll also come to people for their allergy work or for workshops, right? And they can contact you through your website. That's correct.
Yeah, the best way to contact me is through my website and get on my email list. There's a pop-up that comes up on even my sound healing, the website that you mentioned, the soulsounding.com, soul-sounding.com. And there's a pop-up for tips for allergies, because allergies are so much of what I'm working with. But if you put your email there, you'll get on my newsletter and see the events that are coming up.
Wonderful. I just don't want this visit to end. I love it. I'm so glad that you performed with us some too. That's been so fun. I could listen to you all day long. I just love your work. Usually I ask people if they have a parting thought, but I'd invite you, if you have a parting thought, if you'd like to share your music, both. We love having you on the show. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Cheryl. I can do a little more singing for you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Blessings.
Same to you. And gosh, thank you for sharing all of this with us. And everywhere that you go, you are definitely raising the vibration of this planet in a fun way. And I thank you.
Oh, that's kind of you. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for having me on your show. It's been an honor.
Likewise. Would you like to be a guest on Exploring Possibilities? Drop me a note at info@journeyofpossibilities.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Exploring Possibilities.